Welcome to Andy and Ari on 3, as always, presented by Wendy's. We're not even done with this night. We got LSU furiously trying to come back on Ole Miss. Ari, we got Kansas State and Colorado going at it out in Boulder in a very big Big 12 game, and we have, of course, the Ducks partying in Eugene. This is where you talk.
Oh, it's where I talk. I was thinking about setting the fireplace behind us, get the mood going here. You know, I don't know.
Did you? Well, something just happened in the LSU Ole Miss game involving Mason Taylor. Maybe that's what got you transfixed. But
yeah, well, there's a lot happening here, Andy. What a day! Like, it wasn't as nuts as last weekend, right? Like, the results of the games weren't as like out of the blue, crazy. Didn't expect it.
One almost was,
but
didn't get that way.
But we learned a lot, I think. Right?
Yeah.
Like, I think we need to start in Eugene.
Yes,
because Dan Lanning got his first signature win, and you know what I was thinking? The first game of 2022.
Yeah,
that Georgia game. I
think
they lost 49-3,
mm-hmm.
and it was just like a former Georgia coach playing against the Georgia team that he helped win the national title the year before, and they just got boat raced to the point where they probably should have ran a running clock in the second half.
Yes, and it was a case of this is how far you have to go.
Exactly, right. And you learn when you take a job what you need to do and how far you have to traverse to get to this point. And then there have been a lot of losses along the way with Dan Lanning, right, Andy?
Mm-hmm.
Like, people have coming into this game.
The two Washington games, and I will say there were moments in this one where it felt like the first Washington game last year. Because like that first Washington game last year, there were 3 fourth down calls. All 3 of them, I think, based on the book, the analytics book, were correct go for it calls, but he didn't get any of them.
Mm-hmm.
And he had a few tonight where it was like, okay, it's just you got to get one of these, and they did. They got a fourth down later in the game. Now, you and I were laughing because at the very end we thought, oh, it's fourth down. He's not going to go for this, right? And then we see the kicker come onto the field. It's like, okay, thank you. Yes, kick the field goal here, please.
Yeah. But the point I want to make, though, is that, like, in this game tonight, Andy, they're playing against a team that I still think is the most talented, deepest roster in college football.
Yeah, it's the best constructed roster.
Best constructed roster.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean best team, best constructed roster. And through all those trials and tribulations that Oregon has had, the questioning of whether or not he can win a big game, all that stuff, I think that was part of the building process, because this game isn't going to win or lose you a national championship, but what it does do is instill a confidence and a perspective in your roster, your followers, and your program that you have made it to the place that you were so far away from 2 years ago. Maybe it took losing to Washington. Maybe it took losing to Washington again. You know what I mean? But like, to get to this point, to beat this Ohio State team, which we'll get to, think they're going to have to play again, to get to this point at home, and also to leave a lot of points on the field, right? Like, they missed an extra point.
Perfect game by Oregon by any stretch.
They had an interception that I don't think, they got called in their direction. Wasn't a great, perfect game, but it was a game that might not get the fanfare that the Alabama-Georgia game got a few weeks ago, but I think that it's possible that we did just watch.
It was a couple of superpowers going at it.
Going at it on TV. Now, the entire country, I don't think, is going to cling to it the same way, because I think that there was just a perception issue with these two teams, and because they've lost a lot of big games the last few years. But I do think that we're going to see them again, and we're going to see them in a game that is going to tell us who might win the national title this year.
Well, and in a battle of 2 veteran quarterbacks who've both been other places, who won a lot of games at other places, Dylan Gabriel, 23 of 34, 341 yards, 2 touchdowns. He was spectacular. He also ran for 32 yards. Will Howard, 28 of 35, 326 yards, 2 TDs. But the veteran should have known better. At the end of the game, they have a timeout. He takes off running. He slides too late. Clock runs out. And you saw the look on his face, like, I know better. I know better than that.
Yeah.
And he didn't do it. And the time ran out and the game was over. And so it was everything you'd want in a clash of fifth-year senior quarterbacks, though.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they were both awesome.
Yeah. I think that, you don't want that mistake. But from the Oregon perspective, Like, cannot say enough, because I came into this game. If you go back and listen to our shows this week, guys, I thought Ohio State was going to win and win comfortably.
Let's shout out Oregon's offensive line here, because it felt like when Jordan James got the ball, he had 3 or 4 yards of running space before he touched anybody, and then if he broke a tackle, he was going for a while. And I thought that was the part I was a little worried about. Was how would they hold up against a really great Ohio State front seven? And guess what? They looked very much at home. And that's a group that had been maligned this year, because remember, they struggled against Idaho. They struggled against Boise State. They couldn't find the correct 5. They couldn't find the right combination. Well, now they feel like they got the right combination.
Yeah, and the skill position talent on both sides too, incredible. I mean, Evan Stewart broke 3. I think we learned a lot about Denzel Burke tonight, the Ohio State star cornerback. He had a rough
outing, but it doesn't mean that he stinks. It means that they're facing a team in the Big Ten again that has skill. Like, when's the last time Ohio State faced a team in the Big Ten that had the same type of skill talent?
It's been so long. I mean, I guess Michigan last year, but Michigan was just better on the lines of scrimmage.
Yeah, I don't think that Michigan had the skill talent that Oregon has this year, and they won the national title. So, you know, their receivers, Jeremiah Smith, 9 receptions for 100 yards. He had that OPI at the end of the game that might have cost him.
And that's one of those, like, they said, oh, you know, freshman mistake. He just bodied the dude, and maybe he's not used to being that much. I'm sure he's used to being that. He's always that much stronger than people, but he's doing it in college. By the way, touchdown LSU, pending extra point. We could see overtime in Baton Rouge. This is why we started this thing, because this might be the night that never ends. You might be with us until about 3 in the morning.
And Kansas State just scored 2 to go up by 7 against Colorado. So we've got ball here. So do you want to have the Ryan Day discussion?
I guess we have to.
Do we have to?
I'm looking in the chat, and before we have the Ryan Day discussion, because I think the Ryan Day discussion is very serious, and let's inject a little levity here.
Okay.
Let's talk about our guy Merrick, because our guy Merrick tweeted at us the other day and warned us. He said, "I got to go to a wedding. My wife has said you cannot watch any games. How dare you? Do not watch any games. Do not embarrass me." The tweet is on the screen. I'm attending a wedding tomorrow, and last night I received the preemptive scolding that I cannot watch games on my phone during the ceremony or reception. Got to hand it to my wife for thinking ahead, but there's no way in hell I'm following that. Spoiler alert, Merrick had to follow that. Now, he's posting updates to us by tweeting under the table. He did not know what happened in the early games because he asked friends for updates, and they sent him nothing. Your friends are terrible, Merrick.
Merrick. At no point were you able to go to the bathroom and just open up the ESPN app, pal? Like, what? Come on. Think on your head. I would have been on the toilet with a stomach issue.
Yeah.
At some point.
You definitely need a fake diarrhea.
And also, why are you not allowed to watch the games in any moment? Like, can't you just let's break for 5 minutes?
Producer River, let's throw some of Merrick's other tweets up.
Okay.
He says, "It feels like I wasn't invited to a party while at a party." And then he said, "This is what death must feel like." Let's move on to the father of the bride speech. Nope. No. Okay. We had vodka. Here we go. The father of the bride is giving a speech. My wife just texted me not to leave. Oregon is winning now, and I'm happy about it. Drinking old fashions. And as Hot to Go comes on, he finds out Oregon won. So everybody on the dance floor, HOTTOGO. I don't know how to do the dance.
Yeah, I just have never been that person that would have the discipline to record things, shut my phone off, and then just watch it later.
I don't think Merrick's recording this. I think Merrick is just slowly dying inside.
You know, but he'll get to enjoy the highlights and hopefully the show tonight.
Balls Lover won. The wife would have to go if I was told I couldn't watch college football. Balls Lover won. You could be in a very different headspace right now, given the events of tonight. Yeah. So don't make any grand statements quite yet.
Like I get a lot of what's called the PPLs. That's a post-party lecture and a pre-party lecture. I get both.
Okay.
It's supposed to be a post-party lecture about why it behaved inappropriately, and pre-party lecture to stop me
from behaving inappropriately,
which I've always
Ari, be less yourself.
Yes.
Okay.
These are people that I don't want you to embarrass me in front of. And it's like, then why did you marry somebody who would embarrass you? And around we go for the last 5 years. But thankfully, she would never tell me you can't watch or look at the sport. But she also understands that
It's your
She
job.
does get really upset with me when I am too locked in on NFL Red Zone and fantasy football on Sunday. So I do get it. But yeah, well, I hope he had a good time. He had some booze. He had some fun. Sounds like he's an Oregon fan, so good for him.
Yeah, right? Either he's an Oregon fan or he's just a fan of chaos in general, and I love it. I'm all for it. Merrick, I hope that the reception is at least over. They're playing Let's Get It On. Everybody's cleaning up, so you can at least go watch overtime in Ole Miss LSU. Well, it's not maybe overtime. 13 seconds to go. Ole Miss lining it up. We'll see what happens. But while that's going on, because I think there's going to be a coin toss and everything, let us have the Ryan Day discussion. Anthony in the chat says $20 million roster and can't go 15-0 like Michigan did last year. That's true. This doesn't mean they're out of the national title hunt, but
no, that's not the discussion.
Losing the game this way is why we're having the discussion.
Okay, so it is funny to me that the Ohio State roster is more expensive reportedly than the entire Detroit Tigers payroll.
Yeah.
If you think about it.
There was one really pitcher for the Astros that cost more than the entire Tigers payroll.
So I've been very hard on Ryan Day the last few years.
Yes.
Like if you go read the columns that I wrote about him after the Michigan games, like I was like, this is unbelievable, like, unacceptable. And when you are playing against Michigan, I think the standard to win that game is higher than it is in other games. Not that Ohio State doesn't expect to win these games or demand to win these games, but I don't feel like down on him after this one for some reason. Like it's two good teams,
right,
that I anticipate will be in the national championship discussion. You go on the road, and they have dudes everywhere too, and you lose by a point and had a chance to win at the end. Now, eventually, you have to have that discussion of when is the should have had a chance games going to turn into wins? Because the Georgia game, they had a chance, they could have won.
Right, and we're actually going to have this discussion in another way about a different coach later in the night. But so Ryan Day is a different story.
So, in my perspective on the show coming into the week, Andy, I said that I thought Ohio State was going to win this game comfortably because I think that what has happened the last few years with Michigan has altered our perspective on how to view this team.
Right.
I thought they were a juggernaut and were going to be the clear and above best team in college football in a year where there was one that hasn't asserted itself.
Well, and now you're saying, okay, so will they go to State College and win? I don't know.
No, that doesn't change.
Oh, you still think that?
No, I think that they're going to play Oregon again in the Big Ten championship game. But
you got to beat the Hoosiers first.
Yeah, they do. I'm stuck in the middle between when are you finally just going to do it and you lose to a really good team on the road 2 time zones away in the last second when your quarterback slides with time. Like it's like you can get really angry, and I think it's
if Will Howard slides a second earlier, they can call timeout,
kick a field goal, and
maybe they would have made the field goal. It would have been tough, but
post Georgia flashbacks if they had to kick one that was 50 yards away or whatever. But like I'm stuck in the middle between like, is this a slam your fist on the table, Ryan Day can't get it done? And I know that he has a really bad record against top 5 opponents. So yeah, 1-7. So like that is a thing. And a lot of times the 3 of those are Michigan, which is even worse.
Dan Lanning got his one on that column tonight. Like, cause he couldn't get over that hump.
Yeah. But now that he's over the hump, like he gets past that, right?
Right.
Like here's the deal with Ohio State. Like you can spend all your time right now, if you're an Ohio State fan, like getting mad at Ryan Day and saying he stinks and can't win the big game. But the truth of the matter is that he's going to be judged at the end of the year with the accumulation of what has occurred here. And he's going to have other more important opportunities at the end to win that game. And if he doesn't win them at the end, then we can have that discussion. But losing a game that doesn't, I put them number 3 in my top 10, Andy. Like nothing at all about their season has changed other than the fact that you have this in the back of your head of like, well, maybe Ohio State isn't what we thought they were from a roster standpoint, which may or may not be.
Remember what I said when we were picking this game, and you said, no way you should go with Oregon. And I said, I'm taking Oregon to cover. And I didn't necessarily think they're going to win. I remember distinctly saying when Ohio State got held to a field goal at the end, I was like, oh, Oregon's in the cover zone, not thinking they're going to be able to come down the field and kick a field goal to take the lead. But my big question with Ohio State as it pertained to this game was we have not seen them at all against teams that have anywhere near their talent, much less equal talent.
And I guess maybe that's just a mistake that I make.
Well, and that's the thing.
I make it all the time.
But when they play Penn State later, if they play Oregon again, if they play somebody in the playoff of Alabama or somebody like that, they might be a different team at that point because they'll have played against teams of their caliber a couple of times.
And two, like, you are relying on guys like Jeremiah Smith with the game on the line, and he has this experience now. Like, I don't know that I look at this Ohio State loss and go, they cannot win the national title anymore. Like, it's just like, it's so a part of our sport now where losing and learning from it is a part of it. Like, every single loss,
the first 14 playoff, they learned from the Virginia Tech loss.
But like Andy, like when I covered this team for 10 years, every single time they lost, it felt like a funeral. Like people, like
and it's going to feel like that in Columbus and in the great state of Ohio
not saying
tomorrow.
That people aren't sad,
and the Browns suck too. So,
but this is like not. It doesn't even really knock them off the track of going to Indianapolis. And that's the game they have to win, right? Like, if they play Oregon again, they didn't have to win this one. They have to win that one.
As
right?
producer River points out, if JJ Smith is not called for OPI,
well,
they kicked the field goal, and we're talking about
Harrison's head didn't get
right. Yeah,
in
I know.
The Georgia game, and if Michigan,
you got to win those.
If we held Michigan's,
we are going to
an extra second, they would have won last year. Like, you got to stop with the ifs.
We're going to have another discussion about that with another coach.
Yeah,
actually, you want to have that discussion now?
Sure, but do you where are you at though? Because I told you how I felt, but how do you feel? Like, did anything about the Ohio State loss tonight? Did you learn anything or change?
I feel like I learned more about Oregon.
I agree.
That's what I feel like. And if Ohio State plays a team of equal caliber again, I feel like Ohio State will be a little more ready. I think Oregon got the benefit of getting beaten up a little bit by Ashton Genty, and who better to prepare you for Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins than Ashton Genty, who is better than both of them.
Yeah, and it's just like another lesson in a long scale of lessons of like what you see on a scoreboard a month ago does not matter at all. Like, they were in a one possession game with Idaho in the opener. It's like, it doesn't mean anything at all.
It helped them get where they were because the offensive line experimentation that had to happen for them happened because they struggled against Idaho and because they struggled against Boise State. And Ohio State did not struggle at all. So it didn't have to think about, maybe we should tweak this. Maybe we should change this. Now, I don't know that Ohio State needed to change anything. Now, they're going to have to deal with offensive line issues because they had their left tackle.
Yeah, that's an important thing that we have to know. Like, Josh Simmons is going to be out for the year probably, or it looks like it. Ryan Day said in his post-game show interview that he it's not looking good for his return.
Right.
So we'll see. But if you're a Buckeye fan, you know how critical I can get. Relax. It's going to be okay. Like, there's going to be other opportunities in other games that matter more than this one. And they will have a better chance, in my opinion, of winning those games when those time. And if they don't, then we'll have the Ryan Day discussion of what's wrong with him. But I don't know that we're there yet.
No, we're not there yet. But let's talk about another coach who, if you'd have told me before tonight how this game would play, not exactly how that, but what the final score would be, the fact that it would go to overtime, the fact that his team would be in it all the way, I would have been like, oh, Billy Napier really helped himself.
Yeah.
I think what happened to Billy Napier and Florida at Tennessee, losing in overtime the way they did, is worse than if they'd lost by 50. Because of the way it was managed, especially at the end of the first half, like losing that field goal because you had 12 men on the field, which is the 12 men on the field in special teams has been plaguing the Gators for the entirety of Billy Napier's tenure. Like, it is wild to me that that's really how they lost. And then you had 4th and an inch, and you don't just run your 240-pound quarterback up there.
We can thought exercise this.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's thought exercise it. If you lose 55-10, then that means that your entire build of your program sucks.
Right.
Right.
Which is what we were thinking after the Miami and A&M games.
Right.
Yeah.
So that is a thing. Like, we can't ignore that.
Right.
That said, if you're playing against a Tennessee team that we're finding out a ton about, I thought this team could win the national title. It doesn't look like they're going to even make the playoff potentially. And it's been a long 2 weeks. It's been a long 2 weeks in college football. But if you're playing this team to overtime on the road,
yeah, you're doing all right.
You're doing okay from a program.
Right. This was the best Florida's defense has looked in years, like literally years.
But then here's when it gets bad, like you
said.
Yeah. They made every single imaginable mistake.
They should have been up 24-0, I think. And 17-0 if I'm being generous.
The mistakes that they made were coaching mistakes.
Yes.
So on that hand, it's like, bro, your entire livelihood is on the line here. You can like put yourself in a position where people are like, oh, okay. All right, maybe he's our guy. Like you can start to win back people. If they would have won this game, he would have put himself in a position, in my opinion, where people might have been like, okay, well, let's give him a little bit more of a shot. Like, not saying he could have saved his job.
Right.
I think they would have been more open to being like, okay, well, let's see how they do again. And to lose this game, a game that you weren't supposed to be in to begin with, I think it was a 14-point spread, with too many men on the field and targeting and fumbling on the goal line, all these different things.
That's right. They got called for an illegal crackback block.
Yeah.
On a touchback.
Yeah.
And then the guy got called for targeting.
Yeah. So, the Billy Napier saga it feels like it's just an inevitability right now. And I just feel for the guy because I watch him on the sideline. And
the look on his face when they told him about the 10-second runoff.
Yeah.
At the end of the first half, and he realized they were not going to get to re-kick that field goal. It was one of the saddest looks I've ever seen on a coach's face.
Here's the thing too. We didn't even mention this, but Graham Mertz got injured.
He got hurt. Okay. He's gone. He's out. So if you wanted to see DJ Lagway, good. Well, it's not good. It's congratulations. You're going to see him.
Well, and you did when he threw a strike across the middle.
Yes.
But he also threw a game at 17.
First series after Mertz's injury.
But playing with Tennessee with your freshman quarterback that you brought here, that guy forces overtime.
I'd say Lagway outplayed Nico when he was playing.
Yeah, I mean, and I think I'm at the point, I'm sure you are too, that you can just look into the camera and be like, yeah, DJ Lagway's really good.
He's really good.
And I don't know if it's going to be at Florida. Yeah. He's a really good player.
He's really good.
We're not done talking about
Can we also say that maybe we were a little early on the Nico hype train and maybe we need to slow that down?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that's, a freshman still finding his way or, because he does throw the most beautiful ball. I mean, I'm not going to give up on his.
But he misses wide open receivers with that beautiful ball, which Tennessee fans are used to that. They saw that all last year too.
They did. Yeah.
So now maybe that's because he's young and maybe he works his way out of that. I will say, this is just from watching tonight and watching what I could see of the Arkansas game while I was trying to cover Florida UCF last week. It does seem like when they throw on first down, things work better for him. I don't know if that's not really how that offense is supposed to work. That offense is supposed to be handed to Dylan Sampson. He's going to gain 4 or 5 yards if you got a light box, then you throw. So they got to figure out what's going to work for them. But they did win, and that was huge for them because 2 consecutive losses with Alabama coming to town next week would have been disastrous.
Yeah, absolutely. And you still have hope that they can look a little bit better and feel a little bit better about themselves. Tennessee was a top 3 team for me a few weeks ago. And now next week we get to really find out, because you know what? Perfect segue.
Yes. Yeah. Actually, after we talk a little bit about Wendy's Spicy Nuggs, which we love, our presenting sponsor, Wendy's, of course, we're going to talk about the Vols' opponent next week, the Alabama Crimson Tide, which Nick Saban ain't home anymore. He was in Eugene. He wasn't in Tuscaloosa today. It's weird watching this. We'll be right back. Ari, your official welcome to On 3. We are presented by Wendy's, the Saucy Nuggs. That's our specialty item. We have every flavor of Saucy Nug.
Mm-hmm.
You've been training for this your entire life.
I was telling everybody before this, but my dad looked at me in the eyes when I was a kid and he said, son, you can be anything you want to be. You just got to put your mind to it and work hard. And I said, I want to eat Wendy's on camera. So I made it. Here I am.
So I'm gonna just get started.
Okay,
I'm gonna grab some garlic parm.
So, okay.
I like the garlic parm is a very like full, savory. The other like the honey barbecue's got your sweet. Like this is your ultimate savory here, buttery and savory.
Nothing better than washing it down with a crisp zero too. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, a little Coke Zero action. No, that's the spicy buffalo. That's tremendous. I think that's kind of the perfect. That might be my favorite.
This is the Parmesan garlic, and this one I haven't tried yet. Which one?
It's a little bit hotter. Parmesan garlic.
Oh, this is spicy Parmesan.
Yeah,
garlic. Okay.
It's pretty damn good. See, that's
I keep changing my favorite. I think that's the point of this exercise, right?
yes.
That's my favorite one. I could put down 32 ounces of Coke Zero and be like,
It will not.
where's the next 32 ounces of Coke Zero?
Well, and
Yeah.
hey, free refills in the restaurant. So Wendy's new saucy nugs. Take the crispy and spicy nugs you love and turn them up to 11. Choose between flavors like buffalo, honey barbecue, garlic parm, or if you're a real heat seeker, try the spicy ghost pepper only on Wendy's signature spicy nugs. I dare you. That's 7 delicious ways to try the nugs you already love. Pick a flavor, grab some extra napkins, and prepare to nug. Have never nugged before.
He might have made that.
I think he did. Short. Yeah, no, he got it. Caden Davis. That's his name. Caden Davis. We're back. Sorry. Caden Davis just kicked a 57-yard field goal to put Ole Miss up 3 in overtime number 1. Ari, we're going to talk about Alabama. We'll get to Ole Miss and LSU when we get a final on this game.
Mm-hmm.
But again, this, if Ole Miss can pull this out, it's one of those maybe they've figured out how to grind it out kind of situations. But
Yeah. Well, in this season, Andy,
yeah,
just going on the road and winning by 1 in overtime or by 1 in regular, any win that Ole Miss can get, no matter how, if they get 1-3.
There is a look of relief on Lane Kiffin's face. We can't show the video, but I will approximate. Ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh. So LSU's got the ball now. So we'll talk about that because we may be having a completely different conversation about that. Let us talk about another SEC team. Alabama, Ari, should not have beaten South Carolina on Saturday. So South Carolina left a lot of points on the field. They dropped a touchdown pass, which might have been a touchdown pass in the first half, but made quite a few mistakes, lost a lot of fumbles. They could have won this game in a lot of different ways, and Alabama very lucky to escape with a win.
I'm trying to come up, Andy, with
touchdown LSU.
That's it.
That's it.
LSU just beat Ole Miss. Okay, first play. All right, sorry guys. That's
that was unbelievable.
Yeah, no, I was thinking about Ole Miss and all the money.
Well, all right. Well, let's table the Alabama discussion. Let's talk Ole Miss now because as the they're coming. They're coming on the field at Tiger Stadium. So we said coming into this feels like a playoff elimination game simply because both teams have such hard schedules the rest of the way that we can't envision either one running the table.
Mm-hmm.
Ole Miss probably has the easier of the two schedules, but again, they have to play Georgia.
They do.
They have to play at Arkansas. They have to play Oklahoma. Well, we saw Oklahoma. We'll talk about that later. But I just can't see them running the table. Meanwhile, LSU, suddenly they are vaulted back into discussion.
Yeah, we did talk earlier on a few weeks ago about 3-loss SEC teams and the potential of one of those making it. And like Ole Miss's schedule just does not line up. Like for the reason that they decided to go all in on
they
this
weren't
team.
supposed to have 2 losses yet.
Yes. The reason why they wanted to go all in on this team is because they brought a lot of people back and they had a manageable schedule. The bad news is that when you lose 2 games with a manageable schedule, if you lose to Georgia, there's nothing there lifting you up. Like what win are they going to have?
Yeah.
Like I think that aside from running the table, which would include a win over Georgia, I don't want to say they're completely eliminated, but you have to suspend belief here and just give them a win over Georgia to put them in it. But they can't get there unless they beat Georgia.
I also don't think at Arkansas is a gimme.
No. But the thing that's tough about the Arkansas game is that they have to go win it, but they won't get the commensurate credit for doing it if they do.
No, they won't get. But
like,
I think just having to win it is going to be difficult.
Did I use that word correctly? Commensurate.
Commensurate.
Thank
so
you.
Remember, Arkansas shut this same offense down last week against Tennessee. It's the same offense. So I don't know. It's very, very interesting what's going on here. This is not how the script was written all off season, and I'm glad for that. I'm glad. And again, we had our friend Chris Vanini from The Athletic was visiting with us tonight, and we were watching the fans storm the field at Autzen, and Chris and I were laughing at Ari like, see, think it still matters even with a 12-team playoff. Think it still matters at LSU even with a 12-team playoff, because they are having a party. They're going to owe some money. They're going to pay Ole Miss money now.
What do you think this countertop's made out of?
Some sort of silestone.
Do you think it's harder than my skull?
Probably.
Because whenever anybody acts like people having a good time or rushing the field means that the result of the game matters, I want to slam my head into it.
It does matter.
Okay.
Because if it didn't matter, they just get up and walk home.
It's just like it's that those are two separate things.
They are very
People
much
are enjoying
the
themselves.
same thing.
They like football. The result of the game has no material impact on the outcome of the season. Can't those two things exist at the same time?
Oh, this had a very big impact on the outcome of Ole Miss's season.
Oh, but you were talking about Oregon.
And Oregon's too, because now they know. They know.
This game is not the same as the Ohio State-Oregon game. This game was a playoff game, in my opinion.
This game was a playoff game. So, you're absolutely right. And look, LSU's not out of the woods. Like we said, they're scheduled hard. But this gives you a lot more confidence in what LSU can do going forward. What are we laughing at?
I'm just like laughing at the granite countertop thing.
This isn't granite, man. This is something even fancier than granite. Oh yeah. Yeah, I bet you don't even have to seal this. I bet this seals itself.
Yeah. That's electric. The LSU win.
That Kyron Lacey, Kyron Lacey just snatching it out of the air. Like, I mean, that's all me.
We spent all year, Andy, talking about Ole Miss and what they did to put together a roster that could win the SEC, and we have not spent enough time talking about LSU's resurgence. Like, this is a pretty important win.
Hey,
they lost to USC, and USC stinks. I owe you $1,000. I don't know if we have to.
I don't know if they stink. We can talk about it.
Stink. No, they stink.
No, they don't stink. Okay.
Losing 3 times in 6 games is stinky.
It's bad. It's not great, Bob.
Stinky.
But LSU, okay, new defensive staff, same defensive players mostly. Yeah. They Kevin Peoples, who our friend T-Bob Abear mentioned, Kevin Peoples was widely revered for what he did with the edge rushers at Missouri. Look at what he's done with those guys at LSU. Braden Swinson is awesome.
Yeah,
awesome this year, and the fact that they can get pressure on the quarterback, it alleviates a lot of the stress on that back end, which is not what you expect from LSU. It's not loaded with first rounders like it usually is. And the fact that they can get after the quarterback makes life easier on those guys.
And this win now puts LSU firmly back onto the bubble.
Oh, yeah.
And
if not in the bracket, I got to think about that in bracketology.
Pretty big banger in College Station in 2 weeks. Because they're both going to be undefeated in SEC play at that point, I think. Yep. So, and you had, if I remember correctly, A&M in your bracketology a week ago.
I did.
So you do have some thinking to do.
I do have some thinking to do, because both of them have a non-conference loss, but have won all their conference games. So I can look at them, I think, fairly similarly. I can feel pretty similarly about A&M's played one more conference game than LSU has, but
yeah.
I'm still very impressed with both of them.
LSU has Arkansas, A&M on the road, and Bama in back-to-back weeks. Oh, there's a bye week between those two, actually. Yeah. Then Florida, Vanderbilt, tricky Vanderbilt in Oklahoma. But another team that could be 10-2 and get in.
Yeah.
Especially if Ole Miss keeps winning after this. I don't know if they will, but if they do, like, that's a nice little feather in their cap.
Well, it is truly amazing that game, because it felt like Ole Miss controlled it for most of the way, but LSU just kept hanging around. And then when it got to the last touchdown and forcing overtime, the momentum felt like it was squarely on LSU's side. But it is really hard to win a night game in Tiger Stadium. That continues. So I'm excited. I'm excited to watch LSU the rest of the way. And look, Ole Miss is not out of it yet, but they have no more margin for error, and they do have to play Georgia. So it feels like it, but there's a chance they can pull, in Oxford, pull off a miracle against Georgia.
Okay, so we have to circle back to Bama. We also have to talk about Georgia. Georgia beat Mississippi State by 10. Alabama almost lost to South Carolina. Are you you asked me this question earlier today.
Mhm.
You remember the question I'm going to ask? You
I asked a lot of questions today.
You asked me, I can't remember which, if Team X beat Team X, who would you think were, if South Carolina beat Alabama,
South Carolina beat Alabama, yes.
who would be the favorites to make it to the SEC championship game? And I want to know if you still say Alabama and Georgia at this point.
Well, no, Texas and somebody.
Or Texas, sorry.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
what I meant was Alabama, Georgia as the the opponent. For
I really don't feel that way. I think, and again, we don't know about Texas yet, but I'm feeling pretty good about it. But we'll see Texas against Georgia next week, and we'll have a little better idea. But
if Georgia beats Texas next week,
then it's all a giant mess.
It's a mess.
Yeah,
it's a absolute mess.
And that might be what it is. It might be that everybody at the top is kind of good, but also has some flaws that can be exploited by a Vanderbilt or by an Arkansas or by a whoever.
Yeah. And the super team that dominated the 14 playoff field era,
it's dead because
it's weird.
You can't stack depth like that anymore. You just can't.
It's just weird, the absence of it.
Well, we thought it was in Columbus.
We did. And
they went and lost in Eugene.
Unless you think that Oregon is that, but Oregon didn't recruit typically the same way that the super teams.
Yeah, I mean they're certainly a very talented roster, and
they've done an incredible
they
job.
Feel like they belong in this discussion we're having with all these other teams. But I don't look at them as the top to bottom super stacked because
team. It does kind of feel like we are at a place that I thought would be impossible 3 years ago, which is going into a college football season and there being 20 teams that legitimately could do it and having no idea who's going to win.
Yeah.
And I don't know who's going to win the national title this year.
Nope. And that's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's great. Because I do think this sets up, it's not just it sets up a great national title game, hopefully.
Sets up a great tournament.
It should set up a great quarterfinal. It should set up a great semifinal. That's the thing. We so rarely would get. Did we ever get in the 4-team era? I'm trying to remember because we had some years where there were 2 banger semifinals.
Did we? There was always one blowout, I thought.
No, the Peach Bowl, Fiesta Bowl year, Georgia, Ohio State, and Michigan TCU. We got really good semifinals there, but got the horrible national championship game, and then we would get the best we could always do is 2 out of 3, because I'd say that the 2 best games in the same year were the Georgia Oklahoma Rose Bowl and the Alabama beating Georgia 2nd and 26 game in overtime. But I unfortunately had to cover the Alabama Clemson Sugar Bowl. That was the other semi, and that was a dog. So we never got that. And I think that the odds of having more than 3 good games, I mean, we could have.
Well, the reason we never got it is because it was such a.
We could have 8 or 9 good games.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we'll get to a point where we get the middle round of the playoff is going to be crappy. Like when the teams that are at the lower tier, 10, 12, 11, have to go against 1, 2, and 3. But based on the way that the games are going in the regular season, I guess there's no reason to believe that that's the case. So
Scott of Greywater Watch, I love it because Farmageddon is going to be a really important game. Yes, Farmageddon is going to be a really important game. K-State up on Colorado currently in the third quarter, but that's a close game. Don't know what's going to happen there. And Iowa State is undefeated still.
Top 10.
After beating West Virginia and Morgantown. So
Iowa State is legitimately a Iowa type team, and they've already beaten Iowa.
They've beaten Iowa,
but they have good skill players.
They turned Iowa into what it is by beating them that way.
But Iowa State is like Midwestern tough.
Yeah, and
they play the game like a Big Ten team, a Big Ten West team. But it would be like if Iowa last year had
like a good Big Ten West team.
But if like Iowa had like a really good receiver duo.
Yes, I think that's
and a competent quarterback.
Like Jaden Higgins. Like you didn't see there was not a Jaden Higgins in the Big Ten West most of it. Maybe when Rondale Moore was at Purdue.
I mean, is Higgins like one of the leading receivers in college football this year? Like I think if you go look up the stats, like they've got 2 receivers I think who have
Jalen Noel is very good too.
So they have guys, and like this, we haven't even talked about Alabama because so much is happening. But this 28-16 win for Iowa State, you know what? If we're going to talk about how we don't know who's going to win the national championship, then it's appropriate to start talking about teams that we haven't talked about a lot.
Absolutely.
And like Iowa State going on the road to West Virginia in a game that in Big 12 lore or expectations of Big 12 grab ass unpredictability, 3-point spread, 3.5 point spread, they could have lost this game.
Yeah.
And the same goes for BYU and Arizona. Arizona is a team that has beaten Utah and has a pulse and can pop up and surprise some people, where, BYU came out of nowhere. And we were anticipating that both Iowa State and BYU were just ticking time bombs before they slipped up in this hodgepodge of a conference. And both teams had convincing wins to continue to stay undefeated. And both teams are top 10 teams in my
BYU crushed Arizona.
Yeah. Go read out their schedule now.
Oh, yeah. So Iowa State's schedule, by the way, is not easy. There's an Iowa State-Texas Tech game in Lubbock, I believe November 2nd, that I am very excited about. But BYU's schedule, Oklahoma State at UCF, at Utah, Kansas, Arizona State, Houston. Now, if we'd have read this out at the beginning of the year, we'd have been like, Oklahoma State's going to be tough. UCF's going to be tough. Utah's going to be tough. They should win all of those. Now, obviously, the BYU-Utah game is a great rivalry. But
it's the Big 12. They will be favored to win all of them.
By 3.5 points.
Winning each individual one should be fine. Winning all of them is difficult.
Probably
so.
Not.
Like that is,
but an 11-1 BYU making the Big 12 championship game with an 8-1 conference record. Nobody feels like that's out of the question.
No,
right now.
I mean, and that win over SMU in the non-conference
looks awesome.
Looks awesome. So, yeah. So, like, snap of the fingers is what the kids do for like congratulating people. Snap of the fingers for Iowa State and BYU. Because
I just remember like Men on Film, 2 snaps up in a circle.
Yeah, I don't know, whatever. They're on the show.
Snap.
I don't know how many minutes we are into the show here, Andy, but we're talking about Iowa State and BYU.
Before we got to Alabama. Now, we tried to start Alabama,
but frankly speaking, maybe not. Alabama's fascinating.
Alabama's utterly fascinating.
Okay, so
Kalen DeBoer wore a hoodie in 85-degree heat because people made fun of him for wearing a T-shirt.
Do you know what I heard a lot today in the press box at the Red River game?
What'd you hear?
I think it's time to start considering whether or not Alabama is mid. I heard multiple people say that. Are we considering whether Alabama is mid, as young kids
as
would
the
say?
Kids say, yes.
Yeah.
I don't think they're mid. I do I think South Carolina is not bad. But
you do call South Carolina a tough opponent no matter who they're playing every week. So don't think
because they usually are.
Yeah.
I mean, other than Ole Miss, they've given everybody problems.
Yeah. So I don't know that they're bad. But Alabama, we just have to say what it is. I can't remember a more confusing set of 3 consecutive results ever.
No.
Like if you think about where we were 2 weeks ago tonight.
Think about where we were in the second quarter of the Georgia game when they're up 28-0.
Yeah, or just even after the game. 2 weeks ago, this Saturday. It was a game between 2 Titans. The winner and loser are definitely going to play each other in the SEC championship again. The winner and loser are both going to probably play each other in the playoff game. Those are the 2 best teams in college football playing against each other. Fast forward 2 weeks, you have a loss to Vanderbilt for Alabama. You have a near win, or near loss, I should say, South Carolina. And then Georgia's beating Mississippi State by 10. So I don't know where my ass from my elbow right now.
Yeah.
Also, Avery Johnson, Andy pointed out while I was talking, just took a shot to the ribs in the Colorado game and is looks to be in a lot of pain. So we'll monitor that as we continue.
Yeah. I mean, we got so much to talk about. We may actually get through the end of this game if we're not careful. This has been just an absolutely crazy day. The Alabama thing, okay, I don't think they're mid. But do I think they'll just easily run through the rest of their schedule? No.
I love that you're saying mid now because of me.
No, I have teenagers.
Do they say mid?
All the time. Actually, they don't say mid anymore. They said mid like a year ago.
Alabama has to play Tennessee, Missouri, and LSU back to back to back.
I know. And then they play Oregon and Auburn to close it out. I mean,
they play Oklahoma.
Oklahoma and Oregon. Oregon.
Yeah. Avery Johnson's going back to the locker room. So,
yeah. So, Alabama, Tennessee is going to be wild next week because if Tennessee's offense doesn't wake up, Alabama's going to be able to win this thing. But what if Tennessee's offense shows up?
Well, you did come into the week saying that Ole Miss and LSU was an elimination game for the playoff. Alabama and Tennessee both have losses in the SEC. elimination game.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of feels like it. Although it would only be loss number 2 for Alabama. But still, I'm distracted.
Lost 2 for both of them.
Yeah, I'm distracted, Ari, because they've now gone to the local news in here in Dallas. And
so they're just interviewing fans about their experience today?
They're interviewing fans about having to drink a lot of water because it was very hot at the stadium. Like that is the bulk of what they could get out of that game.
Can I ask you, and this is just going to be an aside. We're going to be here all night.
Yeah.
We've been to press conferences for 15 years, me 15, you longer than 15. And there have been television reporters that go to these conferences, right?
Yes.
And they ask questions that a third grader would ask. And it's not because they're stupid.
Right.
It's because it's their job to get that story.
They have to get that particular soundbite
and
that
I'm
goes
trying
with that story.
To figure out why the news is catered to people like they're talking to them like they're 11. Like, why is they had to drink a lot of water because it's hot out a story?
Right. Why wouldn't you just talk about Texas beating the crap out of Oklahoma? Like that would be more interesting.
What are people gaining from that? It's hot.
Yeah.
It was hot yesterday.
Also,
it's going to be hot
You
tomorrow.
live in Dallas. You know it's hot.
Like, are you teaching people that you have to hydrate when it's hot? Is that what the segment is? It's nuts.
It might be.
And every time, and it's local television. Like, why are no TV?
This is a massive market.
Why are no local TV segments on the news even remotely interesting? I've wondered this and who's watching it?
You got a deadly mobile home fire.
See, that's important.
Okay.
You got to tell people about what's going on in their communities.
Yeah.
But these dumbed down weird stories that they do. I mean, have you ever like fallen asleep in the middle of the night to Family Guy or something and then woken up in the morning to the morning news and it's like, next up, a raccoon was found in my neighborhood. It's like, what the?
The only thing I watch on broadcast TV is sports. So
and I've got another mini rant. Can I do it?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. This is the hour break. This is the break in the middle of because we still have maybe an hour to go.
So I have a Ring camera.
Oh no.
What are we gonna do? I have a Ring camera. Do you have one at your house?
Of course.
And every time
I'm a suburban
somebody
dad
comes up to the door, I get the notification. That's great. I love that. But part of the features on the Ring camera is that everybody else who has a Ring camera is like in a community in your zip code. And these people, I don't know if this happens to you, but like can type into the thing like notifications.
I don't share anything with the fellow Ring users.
I don't know how to shut this off.
Yeah.
But I get the whims of everybody who lives in my zip code with a Ring camera.
I don't want to know that.
And I'll get like a notification, just heard a firework, or a dog, saw a dog running around, or
you do have Nextdoor, don't you? That's what that's for.
What are these people doing?
Listening for fireworks.
Was that a firework or a gunshot? Like, what are you doing? And some of them, some of them are so asinine.
You need to follow the Best of Nextdoor Twitter account. You'll enjoy that.
It's like people have nothing going on in their lives. Nothing.
They don't. There are people who have nothing going on. But look,
I just saw a person walking down the street.
Hopefully they like college football podcasts.
Okay, I'm sorry. I get these notifications and I look at my phone and I'm just like, anyone know what happened at Larry Smith Elementary? I just passed by and saw a fire truck. Like, is that useful?
Maybe the firefighters were visiting the class.
I guess I just gave away my neighborhood.
Larry Smith's a very common name, Ari.
Yeah.
So, all right, we got to talk about more football.
Please don't do anything to me.
Let's talk about the game we went to today.
Yeah.
Texas and Oklahoma. So Oklahoma's defense comes out hair on fire, looking awesome. Quinn Ewers looks rusty. We're like, oh, the weirdness is happening. We got to eat deep fried ribs before this. We had a Korean corn dog with the hot Cheeto dust all over it.
Electric.
It was the first few hours of the experience were unbelievable. And then Oklahoma's offense kept giving the ball back to Texas. And then the doors got blown off. And then poor Brent Venables.
The game was kind of like the corn dog. The corn dog was delicious and invigorating at the beginning. And then 4 bites into it, I was like, I'm going to pass out. I'm going to die. I actually started, like, there it is.
There it is. There's corn dog.
that is the largest corn dog I've ever seen in my life. And I got to tell you, 4 or 5 bites into that thing, still no dog. It was just all cheese and flaming hot Cheeto.
Yeah, so there's melted cheese on the top of the dog. It was really good. Yes, covered in spicy mayo to hold the spicy Cheeto dust on. And trust me, the spicy mayo did not bother me a bit.
Yeah, it was delicious. But anyway, as you watched the game, you started getting sick of it. And I got pretty sick of the Oklahoma game. Because Texas did give them an opportunity. Quinn Ewers was rusty.
Texas didn't play great overall, but still dominated them.
So, Oklahoma is a helmet team. Oklahoma has good players. Oklahoma is not a very good team. And Texas is a very good team. And when an okay team with clear issues plays a team that we think is going to win a national championship or compete for one at the highest level, there's nothing that you can do game plan wise. There's no gimmicks from previous rivalries that you can do to make this thing close. I truly believe, Andy, if Texas and Oklahoma played 100 times, that Texas would win 100 times. Like, I don't know that there was
these
any...
two teams. I don't know there's much you could have done because I think Oklahoma's defense is actually good, and there's nothing there's nothing that group could do.
You have to let me address this too, because
go for it.
I didn't do it in the video. We did talk about a video, but I don't know if you guys follow my social media. You're probably better off if you don't. But I did get into it with Oklahoma fans this week. And by getting into it, meaning I didn't tweet and they were all just attacking me. And it was all about Michael Hawkins and a tweet that I sent out during the Auburn game about Jackson Arnold and whether or not he could throw. And I do regret the phrasing that I used. The discussion for this game, though, is not about Michael Hawkins. As much as I would like to say, I told you so, they can't throw the football. They can't block. Their receivers are injured. And their offensive line is healthy, but it was not addressed in the offseason. I don't care if Arch Manning was playing back there. I don't know what you would have to do with the quarterback position to have they can't score.
Right.
And it's not Michael Hawkins' fault. And I'm starting to wonder if it was Jackson Arnold's fault that he was turning the ball over as much. I mean, I would be pressing. The kid's played 4 times.
And that's what we talked about in the video we did after the game, is it is very difficult to evaluate Michael Hawkins Jr. or Jackson Arnold at this point because they got very little to work with.
Yeah.
They're just trying to survive out there.
There's 2 different Oklahoma discussions. One that's up Andy's alley and one's up mine. Andy's alley is, what the hell are they going to do on the field this year?
Yeah.
To win games.
Because I think there's a potential really dark timeline where you have to make decisions at the end of this year.
Yep. And then that leads perfectly into my thought process, which is if neither quarterback has any help from any skill position player, if your run game is so-so to non-existent at times, if your offensive line can't block, and you have to make a decision at the end of this year who you want to hitch your wagon to from a program standpoint, what quarterback are you going to choose? What quarterback do you want to move into the future with? How do you evaluate this disaster?
Yeah.
And also, we're in year 3 of the Brent Venables era. Texas is miles and miles ahead from a total roster standpoint, top to bottom better than you, when that was never the case in the Big 12. And you need to answer all of these questions in one offseason. And you don't know how to do it maybe coaches are just smarter than me. They probably are. But how do you even evaluate Jackson Arnold's he's a 5-star quarterback who's played 4 games. Well,
the other piece of that is going to be who reaches out to those quarterbacks. Do they want to be there? Do they want to be somewhere else?
And both guys could potentially leave, one or the other, not both at the same time, because I'm assuming whoever gets
one's going to want to stay.
One's going to want to stay. But no matter who stays and who leaves, I can imagine the one who leaves going somewhere that has a more functional situation and being really good. It's possible that Jackson Arnold is a star and we just don't know it yet.
Yeah.
And I know Oklahoma fans wanted to throw him under the bus and talk about how he turned the ball over. Yes, he turned the ball over. But what would you do if you started 3 times? There was nobody on your team that could go make a play. There was someone in your face after 3 milliseconds of getting the ball, and you wanted to be good. You would turn the ball over. There was to give up on him. Maybe it was a necessity because you needed to have somebody with elusiveness to get away from.
I think Michael Hawkins is in there because he has the best chance of surviving.
I know, but they were put in a position, whether they wanted to or not, to give up on a quarterback that had all the potential in the world. and they went to a person that has more ability to escape, but also isn't being given any help, and both stink because of it. And it's not because they stink. It means that anybody would have stink in that scenario.
Well, and somebody very early in the show asked in the chat how good would Oklahoma be with Dillon Gabriel at quarterback. Dillon Gabriel would not be nearly as good as he was last year, and certainly not nearly as good as he is right now at Oregon, because he'd be working with the same lack of wide receivers and the same offensive line.
And also, too, what do you notice about all the teams that are competing at the highest level?
They have good offensive lines.
They have good offensive lines, but they also have receivers that get separation no matter what. Like Evan Stewart tonight was playing against a first-round corner and burned him like 4 times.
Oh, yeah.
Like, because good receivers get open no matter who they're playing.
Now, I will say, watching Dillon Gabriel hit receivers in stride after spending a whole day of watching quarterbacks not hit people in stride,
It's kind of refreshing.
It was very refreshing. It was beautiful to watch.
So, I think that, I don't know. This is probably a Tuesday or Wednesday discussion, but I do think that if I were to spend a lot of money or be in charge of an NIL fund, that I
would hire some offensive linemen.
Ryan Williams, Jeremiah Smith type player might be pretty high on my list in college football.
Well, it's pretty high on Texas's list. That's why they signed Ryan Wingo.
Yeah. So, but that's okay. You want to go to Georgia?
Well, let's talk about Georgia, since that's who Texas plays next week. And that's the big game. That game's happening in Austin. It is the F1 race in Austin,
which is why we can't get hotels.
Well, yeah, the hotels have been sold out for a long time. But so Georgia playing against Mississippi State. Mississippi State was very bad when the season started. I suspect they are getting a little bit better, but you're not looking at the 41-31 Georgia win here and feeling super confident about Georgia.
No, I'm not. I still feel like no matter who they're playing in the regular season, I probably would pick them to win.
Right.
Like, it's like one of those deals of like, Georgia isn't the juggernaut that you think they are. You know what? That's not true. I don't know that I would pick them to win next week's game against Texas.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Well, that's
everybody else.
It's a good question. Who do you think is the best team in the country right now?
Yeah. So there's a difference between like rankings and like power ratings. Like, right.
Okay. Let's power rating like you were a Vegas handicapper.
I think Texas would be one
in the power ratings, and then Oregon would be one, and then like a more AP poll style ranking
in terms of like resume. Like Oregon has the best win now, so but like in terms of who would be favored, other people release these polls where it's like it has nothing to do with your record, who you've played, or whatever.
Right.
It's just based on who would be favored.
Yeah,
in order.
Yeah, we see like our friend Parker Fleming at Stats of War. He puts those sheets out every week, and the one that blew my mind, and I actually texted it to Ari Friday afternoon, was the Arizona State-Utah one, where it said Arizona State's predicted points were like 27.16, and Utah's were like 22, and the game ended like 26-19.
But I think 2 would probably be Georgia or Ohio State,
right?
Even though Ohio State lost,
right?
Because you have to think about.
Well, it's the same. It's the same reason that Bama loses to Vandy and is a 14.5-point favorite.
Against
South Carolina.
But I think Alabama has lost that. Like, I think Alabama.
Well, okay. I'm curious about when the lines come out tomorrow.
Ahead, in my poll that I released on 3. So, but I think that it would be some succession of Ohio State, Oregon, Texas, and Georgia would be the top 4.
Cannot wait to see those early lines on Sunday. Ari, we got one really big result. 2 huge brand names that were playing in their first appearance as a conference game. We've seen the last time we saw them play was in a Rose Bowl. Penn State went to USC, farted around for a long time. It was kind of a little bit of the opposite of the USC-Wisconsin game, because remember that game, Wisconsin takes the lead, then USC just sort of pours it on in the second half. In this one, USC takes the lead in the first half. Penn State comes back, but they end up in overtime together, and Penn State wins on a field goal in overtime.
All right, so let me ask you this, and I know that Tyler Warren has been used in a variety of ways.
Not as many as you used today, though. Golly.
When's the last time you saw a tight end catch 17 passes for 224 yards on a touchdown in a football game?
Actually, I can tell you exactly when it was.
I'd love to know. I have no
Dalton
idea.
Kincaid against USC right after Brant Keithy got hurt.
Did he have 17 catches?
I think it was 16.
Really?
Yeah.
So it's just USC's the
It's
common
just-
denominator.
It is. I didn't even think about that, but hold on. Now I'm looking up Dalton Kincaid, USC.
Okay, I'll talk about Penn State while you're looking that up.
Yes.
So anyway, I feel like with Penn State, a team that's now 6-0, we have been spending all year trying to gain a better understanding of who they are. You know, they start the year off at West Virginia with a blowout win. Then they are one
Here it is.
possession game.
16 for 234 yards and a
You
touchdown.
have a really good memory. I don't remember that stuff. They were in a one possession game or could have lost to Bowling Green, which threw us all in a pretzel. Then they beat Kent State. Then Illinois was a boring but easy 21-7 win. They beat the crap out of UCLA, even though you don't see it in the scoreboard. Then you go out to USC. You travel. You go through that terrible, awful, unbelievable.
They had to ride a bus
They had to
to
ride
get to the airport.
from State College to Harrisburg, which, by the way,
It's like an hour and 37
I didn't
minutes.
even want to go down the road.
They didn't even
How
get to
miserable that
stop
must have
at
been.
Hershey Park.
Do you know that they have tasty cake out there? They would have been fine if they
How
would've
many
stopped.
sheets do you think they drove by?
Probably 100. Have you driven through? You've driven through.
I've
Pennsylvania.
driven from Harrisburg to State College multiple times.
Yeah.
Yes.
So there's like a sheets every freaking mile. They keep winning, Andy,
I know.
and they, look like they were just going to bulldoze through USC and just out Utah against them, right? And then USC kind of took control. I mean, USC got up, 20-6, and it felt like they were going to be in control of the game. And then Penn State scored 24 points in the second half, forced overtime, was down late, tied the game late. Drew Aller threw how many picks? Was it 2 or 3? 3 interceptions in this game, and they gutted out a win in overtime. So, I don't know if I want to, raise Penn State to the Ohio State, Oregon pantheon of the Big Ten.
Not yet.
I'm not going to. I'm not going to until they do it. You want to talk about a coach that doesn't win the big games in their conference? Let's talk about James Franklin. So they're not going to get any benefit of the doubt from me. But you know what? They're a top 5 team nationally. They're undefeated in the Big Ten, and I think they get to play Ohio State in 2 or 3 weeks. So if you're a Penn State fan who's upset that they're not higher in polls, then just sit with your emotions for a few weeks. You're going to have plenty of opportunity to do what you need to do in order to prove that that's wrong. That said, Penn State, the greatest beneficiary of the expanded playoff because they're perpetually ranked in between 9 and 13, is actually probably a top 5 team right now. And that's good. So I don't know what we're waiting for. They got to play, they have a bye week, and then they play Wisconsin on October 26th, and then hosting Ohio State on November 2nd. And I think might be a night.
The whiteout is Washington.
Oh, okay.
I believe Ohio State's a noon game.
This one whiteout a year thing, is that what it is?
Yeah, but they
what are we doing?
But they did. Well, didn't they white out Illinois, or they white out UCLA? It was Illinois, right? Because
why can't they just have a whiteout every time they play a good team and just have it?
Well, that's what
sponsored by
everybody
Dick?
just wore white, because James Franklin said.
I know, but
bring
it's
that
not the same
energy.
during the day. You can't.
No,
bring
no,
that
no.
same
It was at night.
Okay, I'm saying if this game is a noon game, I'm gonna walk out into the woods alone and never come back. What are we doing? This is going to be the biggest game.
Fox pays lots of money for those noon games.
I know. No, but I'm saying get BIC to reimburse Fox, have the whiteout sponsorship. The jokes write themselves. They have an opportunity. Okay. That's all I'm going to say. So feel pretty good though. Being 6-0 is an accomplishment this year, and they've beaten a variety of different types of teams in different ways. And I don't know how we feel about Drew Aller, but he threw for almost 400 yards against USC, which
I didn't like the turnovers. Was not
don't love the turnovers, but threw for 400 yards against a team that has a much improved defense. I think I think that you should feel pretty good about Penn State.
Yeah. Producer River reminds us Iowa scored 40 points
Huge
against Washington. We're taking the Iowa over every week, and it's hitting. It was 40.5 this week. There was 50 total points in this game.
Yeah.
They're just running the ball down their throats, which makes me wonder. Now I wonder why Michigan switched to Jack Tuttle last week instead of just trying to run the ball down Washington's throat, because it worked for Iowa.
Yeah. Well, Washington was a team that was putting up 400, 450 yards every week, and they got kind of.
They were getting into Iowa territory, and then Iowa's defense was just stoning them. And kind of in that in between zone, between field goal range and midfield. And so they get stuck in no man's land every possession.
They outgained
56 total points.
Iowa by 70 yards in this game.
Yeah.
And lost. Yeah. By 24.
Yeah. Because Iowa was just running the ball.
I think that's kind of been a theme for Washington. When this happened, they lost to Rutgers too, and I think they had 500 yards of offense.
They definitely statistically, dominated the Rutgers game, but did not win on the scoreboard, which is the only one that matters. One more before we go, Ari.
That hour flew by. I had a good time. That was fun.
Been longer than an hour, and that's okay. We had a little break to critique the local news, but that's okay. So, we'll put Anthony in the chat. Pretty much says it all. Vanderbilt might be elite. Ari, Vanderbilt went up to Lexington, beat Kentucky 20-13. Diego Pavia gutting it out. Multiple trips to the injury tent. 15 of 18 for 143 yards and 2 touchdowns. He also ran for 53 yards. Ari, Vandy's a wagon.
You know what's so frustrating too? Is that Georgia Georgia State game was just like a turnover infested brain fart of a football game.
Right.
And they
should have
scored 22 points in the fourth quarter, then blew it at the end. I think they had to come back. They took a lead late. Georgia State scored. I think they turned it over on their first drive. It was just a bad game. They just didn't play well. And then they played against Missouri in overtime, missed a field goal. They could have won that game. Like, we are not that far removed from 6-0 Vandy with a win over Vanderbilt in Mizzou. Like that is
with wins over Kentucky, Alabama, and Missouri. Yes.
Like that could have happened.
Yeah.
Now it stinks that it didn't. But if you're a Vanderbilt fan,
here's the thing, Ari. Can I point out the obvious that we still won't mention because it's Vanderbilt, but let's mention it. They could make the playoff.
Well, the reason why they could make the playoff is because they still have to play Texas. And I think if you're a 2-loss team by winning out and you have wins over Alabama and Texas, you're probably
well, let's not forget that one of their losses is out of conference. So
yes, they could probably play in the SEC
if they're
championship
7-1 with wins against Alabama and Texas. Oh my God.
Do you want to start the Vanderbilt controls their own destiny bandwagon? Do you want to do that?
I think we have to.
They would probably in this scenario too control their own destiny in the 14 field too.
Not with 2 losses.
I think it's possible that they would.
Maybe. Oh, Vandy also plays Tennessee.
So if Vandy beat Alabama, Texas, Tennessee, and then won the SEC championship against Georgia, you don't think that a 2-loss team like that would have gotten in the 14
true.
field?
There would have been a shot. Greg Sankey would have been on SportsCenter a lot.
The SEC champion will never not make the playoff, and it could be a 1-team field, and they would make it. Okay, like we know that.
So Vandy, yes, Vandy controls its destiny.
You know who else controls their destiny? Army.
Navy. Army beat UAB
Indiana
44-10. Navy and Indiana, the other darlings, were off this week. So Indiana next week plays Nebraska. That's going to be fun. Because that's one of the we marked that as a losable for Nebraska game at the beginning of the season, but now we can also mark it as a losable for Indiana game because Indiana is the juggernaut in this equation. Ari, this is so much fun. Like this week was supposed to be the Titanic one. The matchups, with the exception of Texas, Oklahoma, lived up to the hype completely. Plus, we got the surprisingly watchable. Well, I don't know how watchable Tennessee, Florida was, but it was interesting.
I'm the president of the anti-expansion club, right?
I know.
This is pretty awesome.
Thank you. I told you.
And the reason why it's pretty awesome is because there isn't a clear they're going to win it all team.
No. And that's great. And it's interesting because without getting on to one of your rants about this is what you wanted, why are you still complaining? Your rants about people just complaining on the internet, to which I say, yeah, some people just like to complain. I think there are some people who are upset because they want there to be that Darth Vader juggernaut out there that is better than everybody else.
But if we get to a 12-team playoff,
I would like most of the teams to have a chance to win. Yes.
If we get to let's just do this real quick.
Okay.
12 teams this year with the way the season is playing out. I'm asking you right now, just based on what you've seen, of those 12 teams, how many at the end of the year do you think could win the national
8.
championship? So if we get that, like if that's it, then I'm in. I'm all aboard.
I think we're getting that.
Was not okay with was most years in the 4-team field we couldn't even find 3.
Yeah.
So if the actual answer is here's the playoff bracket, there are 12 teams, here are the 8 that realistically, not bullcrap, sunshine up ass.
Right. Don't have to get incredibly lucky.
If I'm the person who has never lied ever to you, could look you in the eyes and say, hey, yeah, the 8 seed, I don't know. They're like, if it's like the Tennessee type team that's feeling good, like, you know what I mean? Like if there are 8
somebody
teams,
who's hot at the end of the season, feeling feisty, that's like that 8-9 game winner that could take out the 1.
What would stink
in the
is
quarters.
a 12-team field if you had Alabama, Ohio State, and Georgia and Oregon. And then there was a huge clear drop off from everybody else. And then we're just having a tournament for the sake of doing it. But that's not what's happening here.
No, that's not what's happening here. And by the way, we mentioned one of the other darlings that was off this week is Navy. Biff Poggi and Charlotte playing Navy in Annapolis next week.
The guy's an absolute menace with that.
He's going to have the cutoffs. Oh, it's going to be amazing.
Menace to society.
Charlotte, not terrible, by the way. 3-3 this year, 2-0 in the American. This season is so much more than I had hoped it could be.
I'm so sorry. I know we
no, go ahead. Too legit.
We forgot.
Too legit to Pitt. Pittsburgh is still undefeated. We were thinking it was over. We were thinking the run would end because Cal had the ball deep in Pittsburgh territory, down 2. But the Panthers pulled it out. Pat Narduzzi and his amazing cardigan. He didn't wear his cardigan during the game, but he should have. I hope he wears his cardigan to the press conference.
But like that's a team now that is going into potential bracketology and bubble watch because
6-0.
They are 6-0. They play Cuse next week. They're on the road at SMU on November 2nd, which may be a huge ACC game.
May help decide one of the participants. Well, Clemson and Miami obviously are very good.
Yeah,
but there's a chance that could help decide who plays in the ACC championship.
But they don't play Miami.
They do play Clemson.
But they do play Clemson. But I don't know. Miami doesn't play Clemson or Pitt, so they're in a pretty good position to make it there. But
remember when Clemson won the national title in 2016, you know who they lost to?
Wait, ask that again?
When Clemson won the national title in 2016, do you remember who they lost to? They lost to Pitt.
What year did they lose to Syracuse?
The following year, 2017 on a Friday night. Yeah.
I remember where I was.
I don't want to know.
I was in a hotel room.
Oh, okay.
In, I think,
by yourself?
Indiana.
Oh,
yes.
Okay. Waiting for Rondell Moore to do something.
Waiting for the Domino's guy to show up. What are we talking about?
Okay. All right. Gotcha. Listen, that could have taken a very dark turn at some point. But this is a lot of fun. And Pittsburgh, one of those teams that we didn't have high expectations for. They hired Cade Bell, the offensive coordinator from Western Carolina, and he comes in, and they're Eli Holstein, who was a big time recruit, had gone to Alabama, ended up going to Pitt as a transfer.
And like the thing that's so cool about it too is like Pat Narduzzi. Can we just call it like it is? He says some stuff that I wouldn't say.
Yeah,
sometimes
that's one way to put it.
He rubs people the wrong way sometimes. Very good football coach. And when he's swaggy with the cardigan and like feeling himself a little bit, like he's highly entertaining.
Well, he's got a lot of Mike Gundy in him. Like when you don't expect anything, that's when they come out and kill you.
Yeah, it's like the Jordan Addison stuff was like, all right, dude. But then the cool stuff, the fun stuff, I'm into it. So I'm excited to watch Pitt, and I don't know where I'm going to be on November 9th, but I might be, or November 2nd, but I might be at SMU Stadium.
That could be a fun game. Because Pitt's games are like that Pitt West Virginia comeback was crazy.
And we didn't talk about it enough. I regret it.
Yeah. Well, Ari, we've talked about pretty much everybody now. I think so. Who do we forget? Did we forget anyone?
A team.
Okay.
We did not forget a team, but I tweeted I was going to do something.
Oh, okay.
I have to do it.
All right, go for it.
The best player in college football that we never talk about. I just want to give him a round of applause, even though his team lost today. Trey Harris.
Oh, He's so good.
He should be in the forefront of the conversation for like I'm putting him on my Heisman. I don't know if I should say
Biletnikoff.
But he is it's just such a treat to watch him. We've talked a lot about Ryan Williams and Jeremiah Smith and other people in that realm. Even Ryan Wingo got out there a little bit. Trey Harris, I don't know how many catches he had.
Let's find out how many catches he had. Trey Harris had 7 catches, which brings the season total to 59.
59 catches, and he had over 100 yards and a touchdown, and the touchdown he had.
And he was hurt this week.
Circus catch while hurt.
Yeah.
I just wanted to give him his flowers. He deserves it. I don't know what's going to happen, down the line here for Ole Miss. Maybe they'll beat Georgia and they'll make themselves interesting. But at the very least, some NFL teams going to be very
Garrett Nussmeier's stat line from this game: 22 of 51 for 337 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 2 picks. That is, he ran the gamut of emotions today.
Kid's got a laser.
He was
a laser beam.
But that is up and down. That is you have experienced everything you can experience in a football game when you have a stat line like that.
Crazy world.
And we have experienced pretty much everything you can experience in a football weekend, on a football Saturday. It lived up to the hype. The Oregon-Ohio State game absolutely lived up to the hype. The Ole Miss LSU game absolutely lived up to the hype. We got some pleasant surprises in terms of good games that maybe we didn't see coming, like South Carolina, Alabama, like Florida, Tennessee. Ari, it never fails. College football never fails.
And it won't next weekend, Andy.
It will not next weekend. It's going to be awesome again. We got Texas, Georgia next weekend, for goodness sakes. It's a conference game. I love this sport so much. We will talk to you again. We will have a bracketology video. We will have a bubble watch video. Those will be video exclusives. The next time you hear us on your various podcast platforms will be Monday, when we're picking the games, including, of course, Texas, Georgia. Talk to you soon.